Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today, I have a jaw-dropping story about how my wife planned to meet her lover, completely unaware that I had placed a GPS tracker on her. What happened next will leave you speechless. Stay tuned. My wife and I owned a bakery for 5 years. It was okay for me, but it was mostly her deal. She found her passion in baking, and I was her willing assistant. My passion, however, was in voice acting and impersonations. I was just starting to make some money on the side by utilizing my skill, so I usually didn't want to be at the bakery. My wife was growing annoyed with me because I didn't share her passion. I didn't think it would drive a wedge between us, but it did. One day, I was helping my wife at the bakery when a returning customer stopped by. I knew him AP for years, but when he came in this time, he looked disappointed that I was the one approaching the counter. He appeared to consider leaving the bakery altogether, which I thought was weird. I took his order for his daughter's birthday cake, and he kept glancing into the back. He asked how my wife was doing. After he left, I told my wife he was in and placed an order. She looked at me with interest, then looked away, bummed. Her hands were covered in dough while she told me she enjoys being the one to interact with customers because she has pride in our business. I just said something like, uh-huh, because I wanted to go home and record voices. Another day, when her cell phone buzzed on the counter out front, her hands were messy again, so I went to glance at it to see if it was important or business related. She looked worried as I walked by. When I looked at it, I realized why. It was a text from the aforementioned married father that ordered his daughter's birthday cake. As my wife prepared the cake, he texted her, asking if she was free to come over again that night at 7, since his wife and kids wouldn't be home. My jaw dropped as I stared at it. Another text came through that said he missed her body. I entered the passcode to my wife's phone for the first time in a year. Thankfully, she hadn't changed it. As I scrolled up, my eyes scanned over a plethora of naughty, sexting, nudes, and affair messages. My wife was getting antsy in the back room, asking me who it was from. I told her it was a spam email that tricked me for a second. She laughed a little and looked relieved as she put the little girl's cake in the oven. I told my wife I needed to go home because I had some voice acting things to work on. I knew she would believe me and leave me alone about it because fighting me on it never worked. I actually sat in my car nearby and stared at my wife's GPS location. I never relied on this before, and I could only hope she wouldn't turn it off. I held my breath when she started moving down the road. I started following her, and seconds later, a text came through from my wife that said she'll be closing the store late because a huge order was placed. My heart broke at this very moment. Then I saw her GPS turn a different way, and I knew we were over. She was sleeping with our married customer. I kept driving, just barely able to stay focused. I felt the blood moving through my body at an alarming speed. She hadn't turned off the locator, so she led me straight to AP's house, just as she was getting out of the car and his front door was opening. I met them both at his front door, and I can't even recall what I was saying, only that I was just yelling and staring at them. AP didn't know what to do besides yell sorry and try to shut the door as fast as possible, but I stopped him by punching him in the face. He fell to the floor just inside his house, unconscious. My wife was speechless and red in the face. I asked her to explain herself, but she couldn't speak due to shock and embarrassment. She freaked out that I punched him, but then all she could say was sorry. The affair fog cleared and she realized we were standing in front of AP's house, all because she started an affair with him. A married man and father who shouldn't have been anything more than our customer. I started yelling again because I thought of our wedding day and the day we started our business. I dashed back to the car before the tears came from realizing the life we had was changed forever, and she probably did this more than once. I thought about all the messages they sent and how she lied to me. Sadness turned into anger, so I drove home, leaving her standing in AP's driveway. I packed stuff and printed notices to put on the bakery windows. As she arrived home, I was driving down the street to return to AP's house. The front door was closed now with another car in the driveway. All looked peaceful, but that wouldn't last. In their mailbox on their doors, in some of their bushes, and a few on the windows, I put copies of my notice. It named my wife and AP in a sexual scandal that deemed the bakery filthy. I quoted some of the filthy things they said to each other, and one nude of each. Then I informed the health department. Hours later, the whole town was freaking out. People started talking really fast about the scandal. You don't realize what a small world it is until it comes crashing down. My wife closed the business before the divorce was final and before the health department officially ordered her to close because her customer base was gone. She left the state alone with her SUV packed full, headed to someone she met online seeking a roommate. I got to keep our house since she couldn't afford it without the bakery, so I sold it, and just like that, everything we made together was dissolved. During all this, she did try reaching out to me, which is how I found out that AP was divorced, but they wouldn't continue to see each other. He had to move 120 miles in the opposite direction. She always said sorry and that she understood why I ended it. I asked her why this happened, and all she could say was that he greatly admired her cooking and flattered her by saying things like he wished she was his wife. I told her I wouldn't wish for her to be anyone's wife. I stopped answering her calls after that. I knew she was probably scared or going through a lot, and I didn't want my emotions getting involved in her karma. I am healing and doing well. With the profit I got from the house that I never wanted to see again, I got a really sweet new place to call my home. It includes a home office for my voice acting and impersonation career. Opie, I am so glad you recovered from this ordeal the way you did. It was so lucky that you found AP's messages. As hard as it was to go through this, you had to discover the truth, and you got them to follow through with their sneaky behavior to catch them in the act. They were very bold, inconsiderate, and careless. AP even knew who you were and ignored the fact that he was stealing your wife's honor and love. The least he deserved was a punch in the face and to lose the family he betrayed. I understand why you freaked out. Your wife and AP didn't deserve to get away with living a double life while they had loving spouses at home. You are an example of what to do and how to handle infidelity. Thank you for sharing this story. I wish you the best of luck. Now, let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I lived in California for the entirety of our relationship. We met when we were in college, both 19 years old. She was in theater and movie acting. She enjoyed acting in plays, but her dream was to be in the movies. She was lovely and already had some jobs as a model. I was smitten. I was majoring in behavioral psychology. We married after she graduated, and I continued my studies while she got roles in any play or movie she could find. She was always at rehearsal while I was at work, and occasionally when I was home. Sometimes I was invited to her rehearsals, but those invitations stopped when she got the lead female role in one romantic comedy play. She came home later and was gone way more during this play than all the other ones. By this time, we were married for 3 years. I asked if I could go to one of these rehearsals, and she said these were private. I thought that was weird. She got free tickets for her family to come when it was finally time for the performance. We all attended on the same night. Her mother, father, sister, and me. She was a beautiful, convincing actress. The male lead in the play seemed to have great chemistry with her, but nothing convinced me so much as the passionate kiss at the end. I'd seen her kiss in other plays, but this one seemed different. I was convinced my worries were valid when she looked at him instead of me after the show was over. Her own father made a comment that fed into my worry. He said she could rip out any man's heart because it looked like she was in love with that man. We got to meet the cast, but my wife introduced us oddly to her male co-star. She introduced her mom and dad as her mom and dad, but then she only introduced her sister and I by our first names. Like, we could have been friends of hers or a couple. I told her my worries later that night after our celebratory dinner. She admitted she felt bonded to him, and they had a great time together during all the preparation for the play. I asked her to stop talking to him completely after closing night. She looked devastated and said if I'd reconsider, she planned to work with him again. It was because of the onstage chemistry I was so uncomfortable with that she saw her career's potential to blossom with him as her co-star. I took this opportunity to ask her a few questions since she wanted me to reconsider. I asked if they ever hung out alone without my knowledge. She looked a little embarrassed, but said yes. I asked why, and she said it was to rehearse their lines and eat dinner. I asked if it was like a date, and she said she didn't see it that way, but she wasn't sure what he thought. I asked if he knew I was her husband, and she said she introduced me. I pointed out she only said my name, and she looked confused, like she didn't remember doing that. Following the awkward silence, I told her I didn't want her to contact him or work with him again. She looked really upset and kind of angry. She said she didn't deserve to be controlled. I told her this wasn't something she could fight me on. It was a matter of keeping our marriage true and honest, without anything that would make one of us uncomfortable. Well, she did eventually tell me she'd stop talking to him, but 1 month and many long absences later, I knew she could still be meeting up with him and doing things without my knowledge. One day, 5 or so months later, my wife and I were actually spending time together outside when she took an Instagram selfie without me. It showed the back of our house and location, which is part of the reason why AP jumped our fence. The other reason is that my wife had apparently stopped talking to him for a few days, and now he knew why. It was because he saw me and realized she was married. Of course, I recognized him from the play. My wife was freaking out and trying to say she hadn't seen him since the play. He didn't want to say anything when he realized she was betraying him, but I told him if he didn't want me to call the cops for his trespassing, he needed to be honest and tell me if they were having an affair. He said they were, but he hadn't heard from her, and now that he knew she was married, he wouldn't see her again. After he left, my wife told me not to believe him. She said he'd been trying to see her again ever since the play, but she refused without telling him why, so he lost it. Well, I'd have to be a fool if I didn't at least investigate what AP said, so I checked my wife's phone and, to her dismay, found her WhatsApp and made her log in under threat of divorce. There were all the messages with AP. She only stopped talking to him for 3 days, but there was evidence she had sex with him at his house several times after they went out together on dates. They were a full-blown couple since the play. I showed her family via screenshots sent from her phone before I smashed it. Then I kicked her out, and she begged me to give her a second chance. She said she realized now that it was just an infatuation, and beyond their acting skills, they had nothing in common, and she didn't want to sleep with him or anyone else besides me ever again. I told her she might as well join the Coven of Nuns because she would never have me again. I trusted her, supported her, and wanted to build a great life with her. After I kicked her out, she tried countless times to break in, so I got restraining order until our divorce was final. Then the house was officially mine. Opie, I am sorry your wife fell for a man that was never meant to be hers. I'm sorry she lied to you about it and kept her marriage to you a secret from him. She doesn't deserve to be given a second chance after something like this. She would never respect you in the same way, knowing she could get away with cheating whenever she felt like it, and always count on you to keep a roof over her head. I am proud of you for all the actions you took, and that you didn't give in to her begging. It takes a strong person to be able to handle this the way you did. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a great day. Today, I have a jaw-dropping story about how my wife left me for a mechanic she just met and took our kids with her. What happened next is something you won't want to miss. We've been married for 5 years. We have a 4-year-old together, and she has 2 other kids from a previous marriage. They are preteens. About 2 months ago, we went to the mechanic shop to get her car serviced, and she kept talking to the guy there and looking at him. I ended up talking to him too, because I had a Raiders jersey on, and he said he was a big fan of the Raiders. Anyway, I work 10-hour days, and she absolutely hates that, but she is a stay-at-home wife. I pay all the bills, so I have to be away. She was seeing this guy we met at the car shop every day I was at work behind my back. 3 weeks ago, I came home, and she wrote me a text saying she was gone, and she was in love with this guy, and she believed he was her soulmate. I did my research, and the guy had no place to stay, so they all have been living in the car I paid for in different parks. You know what the sad part is? She left our 4-year-old behind and took the other 2 kids that are not mine. She has blocked me on everything. Family members have sent me posts of her saying how much happier she is now and how in love with her sexy man she is. It hurts to the core. I can't eat, sleep, or function at work. Worse, my daughter cries every night. Thank God my sisters and mom have stepped up to take care of her while I work, and they watch her full time on the weekend. It's like I'm numb and don't know what I did so wrong. I took care of her, loved her when she was sick, and loved her children. The worst thing she said I did was work too much and that I didn't have time for her. Well, sorry, I'm the only one paying bills, and it sucks so bad. The other worst part is last night, she had the cops beating on my door. When I opened up, it was her and the cops. They were escorting her in to get her things. I'm so glad our daughter was sleeping. She gathered up some more clothes and told me to toss the rest, and that she would never be back. I looked outside, and the guy she was with was sitting in the passenger seat. I am beyond livid. Oh yeah, and she texted me this morning asking if I had gas money for her and if I'd pay the car note. She said she would talk to me face to face, but only if I did that for her. I didn't respond. I am numb. Yes, I worked a lot. I'm sorry I didn't have time to take you to the movies or a special dinner, but we have never been hungry. We have a beautiful house, and I always gave her anything she asked for. Why not communicate so I could have worked on being a better husband and father? My wife is so beautiful. I thought I was lucky, but now I see the real her. Update. I met up with her at the gas station by the house. When she was crying on the voicemail, I gave in. Sorry, I'm only human. I do love her, but I am done with her now. When I got to the gas station, I was shocked to see her as I think people are right that she is on drugs. My wife was already small, but she is bony now. She always used to dress beautifully, even when in casual clothes, but she was in literal sweatpant racks. I gave her $200 for food and gas. Her guy was in the car, as well as my kids. I said, I will take the kids, please. They can go to school or your family can pick them up. She said no. She wanted her kids with her, that they were no longer any of my concern. This killed me inside as I've been their dad for 5 years. They called me dad, and I love those kids with my heart and soul. She refused to say if they were in school, don't worry. I called CPS today and left a voicemail. I said, you have another kid, remember? She said, yeah, I love her and miss her, but right now I do not want to be in her life, and she needs to respect that and get over it. She is better off with you. She literally said, I don't want to be in her life. I said, are you in love with that guy? She said yes, she was. She made it clear that she didn't want to talk about it. I said, oh, I wanted a divorce, and she said no, that she didn't want to discuss that either. She does not want to give me a divorce. Well, shocker, I am getting in contact with a lawyer. Then she said I must pay the car note on Friday. I said, nope, not going to happen, or your phone bill. She said he would pay her phone bill, but that I would pay my car note because it was my car. It is in my name, though, so that will be a fight for me in the future. Whatever. Not arguing. Bye-bye. But the craziest thing was she said I love you loud as hell as I walked away. I didn't even turn around or say it back. That was it for me. Oh, my birthday is tomorrow, and I asked if I could take the kids out to eat with me. I plan on going to my favorite steakhouse with my daughter and family. I would love for them to come. She said absolutely not. So I said, are you really sleeping in Parks and Y? She got upset and said I needed to mind my business. So, yeah, folks, thank you so much for all your advice. I was scared to call CPS, but I did it. I just feel like this is a long emotional battle that I am already drained of. Update. My wife showed up at the house demanding car payment money Friday night. I told her I was not paying it, and she said that she wanted to talk about coming back to me. I said, no, I do not want you here. Please leave. There is no car money. I am not paying it. She refused to leave and brought the kids into the house. I called the police and they came. She said it was her house and I told them the situation. They asked her to leave and she said, okay. She told me she would be filing for divorce on Monday, and I told her I already had a lawyer working on it as she was pulling out of the driveway. I saw a van at the end of the driveway, and it was her guy waiting for her. Our daughter was not home on the weekend. She likes to stay with my mom, so I'm thankful she was not there to see the big drama. Not that her mom even asked about her or asked how she was. I told the cops my kids were living in her car and they needed to go check the car because she had everything in the back seat as well as her dog living in the car. She lied and said they were living in a motel and all of that stuff in her car was from her taking it from the house when she left. She went outside and talked to the cops. I'm so over the drama. When she came into the house, she was acting very weird. It was night, and she had on sunglasses. I told her to take them off, and it looked like she had a black eye. I asked her what happened, and she said it was from lack of sleep. She looked a lot better than the last time I saw her, though. Some note I did not pay the car payment. I feel guilty. I know people wanted me to report it stolen, but I feel like my kids are going through a very traumatic time. The principal of their school, as well as CPS, has all the information. I wouldn't mind taking the kids in and raising them myself, but I feel like right now they would be better off with her family as they are aware of the situation as well. So tonight I got a ding, and it was her asking me to pay for medicine for my daughter because they were all coming down with COVID or the flu. I ignored it and I went back and forth about blocking her. For some reason I couldn't. My daughter called and she did sound stuffy, so I said, "Can we meet at CVS?" She said yes, and we met up. I bought them some stuff. He was not with her. I also bought them some food. She said, "Can we talk?" I said no. As soon as I got back home, my son texted from her phone asking me if he could come to visit me next week. I said I really didn't know that he should be focused on school and that I would see them soon. This is very draining for me. I'm feeling like I might block her number for now, at least until I meet with my lawyer next week. I am feeling extremely guilty for not paying the car payment, but I'm standing my ground about it. Update. Well, she's back begging to come home. She said she was sorry and that she has broken up with the guy. She called me to pick our son up. He told me he was tired of sleeping in the car and he tried to run away. I told him he could come home. He's here now. She let him come. My daughter said she wanted to stay with her mom. Shortly after, I got a text saying she was sorry and that it was a bad decision. She said she has been alone this past week and she is talking about suicide, saying she is done with life. I told her she couldn't come here and that I was sorry that the guy was treating her badly today. I thought they were doing good and she said that I really didn't know her. She was having a nervous breakdown and mental issues. She didn't know what to do but run. Update. Well, my wife is still on the streets with this. My son was with me. He wanted to come home. He was tired of living on the streets, so he begged to come home. She agreed and I agreed. My daughter wanted to stay with her mom, but she decided last week to come home too. Well, she was home for all of 2 days. When she came home from school one day, she ran away. We found her underneath a bridge close to our house. She is going through mental issues and I'm trying to get her some help. I am filing for divorce, and when I told my wife, she cried and told me that she was sad but she was in love with that guy. Fast forward to a few days ago. She called me crying saying this guy was acting up. He told her he felt like he was taking on too much with her and that he needed to take a step back. He's only 24 years old and he said at first he felt the connection strongly, but he just wanted to focus on himself. She called me crying and upset. She came and got the kids and all their clothes. She said she was going to LA to get into the homeless program there. I asked her not to take the kids, and she said no. She wanted the kids with her, and she thanked me for everything. She then asked if we could talk about us getting back together. I calmly told her that would not happen. She hurt me too bad, and I couldn't just go back to the past. I forgive her, but I am numb now. I just want a divorce, and to raise the kids. I told her we could at least do that so they could be happy and we didn't have to be together to make that happen. She left the house and I got a call this morning. She said she was going to end herself today. She thanked me again and said she was done with living. Everyone had hurt her. She tried to make me feel guilty. I just called the cops and explained to them she had my kids and threatened to harm herself. I don't know where she is. Every time I feel a little closer to being myself and happy again, she does something that pulls me back into an abyss of darkness and hell. The stress will kill me for sure. Update. She didn't harm herself. She just went missing. A few days ago, she dropped the twins off at her doorstep. They are now safely with me. They are back into the routine of eating every day consistently, taking showers, and having fun in her backyard as kids do. All three of them are really hanging close to each other. Our 4-year-old is smiling again. She loves having her brother and sister here with her. Last night they all begged me to order pizza and watch a movie, so I said yes. Okay, let's do it. This was the happiest I've been in months. Just looking around at my kids laughing and having a good time. I am content right now, but I still have anxiety that she will show up and snatch them away from me. I've been in constant contact with CPS just in case, because I have a strong feeling she is coming around soon. She's only called once since dropping them off, telling me that she is with her boyfriend and they are more in love than ever. She says that he has inspired her to get a job and start making her own money so they could get home together, and that she will be back for the twins. So right now she is supporting his dreams and he is supporting hers. Yeah, okay, cool. She also apologized for threatening to harm herself. She said she was just stressed. I'm done with her madness. Just focusing on me and the kids. I am also planning on taking them on a mini vacation at the end of October, Disney World. Her phone bill was due Friday and Verizon sent me a reminder. I did not pay it, and I called them to see if I could somehow get out of the contract because not paying eventually will end up on my credit report. So I'll more than likely have to pay money to break the contract. Either way, she's costing me money. I forgot to tell you guys her weed man showed up at our house. I had no idea who this guy was and what he wanted. I saw him on Ring and asked him what was up. He said he needed to talk to my wife. I said she was not my wife and that we were divorcing. I asked, who are you? He said, can I come to the door? It's urgent. Ken, I said no. He told me that my wife had run up a weed tab of close to $2,000 and she had not paid him. He wanted his money. I'm floored in shock. He said that my wife told him I would pay him. I said no, I had nothing to do with it, and asked him to leave. So, he said if I see your wife it's going to be a problem. Immediately I called her, and she sent me to voicemail. So, yeah, great, some other bullshit she's brought upon me. I'm thinking of calling the cops to tell them my wife has been giving out our address to strange people who are showing up at my door. Can they do anything? Final update. Last weekend one of the twins got sick and I had to rush her to the ER. They told me she had appendicitis and had to get her appendix removed. I called her mom, who took about 40 minutes to arrive. She came in with her boyfriend. Immediately I got pissed off and told him to leave because I had my 4-year-old and the other twin with me. I didn't need this guy around, so he was acting calm, telling me we needed to go somewhere and just talk man to man. I told him no and that I had nothing to say to him. The entire time my soon-to-be ex-wife was telling me to stop. She didn't even rush to the back to check on our daughter. She just stood there and tried to console him as I was telling him to piss off. I could tell my kids were getting upset, so I went to another part of the hospital and left them standing there holding onto each other. The doctors told me my daughter's surgery will be an emergency surgery that morning, and her mom heard that. Well, guess what she asked? Just how long would it be, because her new stud had to go to work and she was his ride. I told her to just go leave. Just go take him to work. At that point I'd been there for a little over 2 hours myself, and that whole line at home my daughter, who was 13, cried in stomach pain. So my wife said, yeah, I'll be back before she goes back into surgery. I'll just drop him off at work. Well, that was last week and we haven't seen her since. She never came back to the hospital. She did call yesterday to ask how it went and if she could come to get some food. I told her if she showed up I'd call the cops. I've also asked her to surrender the vehicle she's in that I pay for and is in my name, or I would get the cops involved. I'm beyond over her and so disgusted with her. When I made that original post, yeah, I had a little hope she would come back to me. Now I have nothing at all for her. She even told me on the phone I sounded harsher and harsher with her. I'm trying to get full custody of these kids. Yeah, they're my stepkids, but I will not under any circumstances let them go back with her. She will have to call the police on me first. I can tell the kids are conflicted. They love her, of course, and they want the old her back, but she is gone. They are hurting waiting for her to show up, but she is gone. Gone in love, gone in drugs. It's the truth. I've accepted the situation for what it is. I have a divorce lawyer. She said she would never sign the papers because she didn't want a divorce. She wanted me to understand that she was just going through a life crisis and to accept it. I don't care. She can do what she wants, but she can't drag us in the middle of it anymore. The locks were changed on Monday. She has no place here. No home to come to. The car will be out of her possession soon, as well as when I pay off her phone bill. I finally realized and came to grips with the fact that the reason she was able to continue to hurt us was that I was still waiting and wishing for that old person that I fell in love with to show up. But the old person didn't just leave. This is who she was all along, and by enabling her and allowing her access to me and her kids freely, everyone was damaged. She has to be cut off completely. This is scary because she can take her kids anytime because legally I never adopted them. I am ready to fight the good fight when it comes down to it. My wife has a younger sister with whom she was very close. They would talk every day when my wife was living at home and her old self. Her sister called me crying. She has not spoken to her and will not answer any of her calls. When my wife first left me, she was talking to her sister. Then she also blocked her sister on social media. My wife's mom said my wife was on drugs and that all they could do was pray for her. Apparently she and the mechanic have been seen around town begging for money and food. They are staying in a ragged motel across town, and when they can't afford that, they just sleep in the car together. Oh, and she told me she pawned her wedding rings. Yep, both rings I got her. Gone. Straight up told me to my face. The great news is my wife's family doesn't really want to take care of the twins because they have a lot going on in their own lives, so nobody is fighting me to take them. My wife agreed some weeks ago the twins will be with me until she finds a stable home. She told me she might even go into a homeless program and she will be back for them then. I am filing for emergency custody next week. Wow, Opie, please speak to your stepkids privately and make sure neither of them was abused by the guy or his junkie friends. Guys like this mechanic are taking advantage of vulnerable people regardless of age, especially when there are drugs involved. Be perfectly clear you're there to protect and support them, and you want to make sure they know they have someone in their corner. Tell them they don't have to call you dad, but to you they're your kids and you'd do anything for their well-being. Stepkids need to hear that. You've completely expressed it, but sometimes the words matter too. I'm sorry you're all going through this. Those kids are very lucky to have a father like you. At least you still have a family in the kids, and they'll always appreciate what their father sacrificed for them. I do some documenting regarding the kids. How long you've been providing for them, what you've been providing in the way of health insurance or other official documentation, that you own the home they're registered at school with, stuff like that. That way when you look towards adopting them or even just trying to them instead of giving them to social services, you'll have proof of history and care. Good luck, Opie. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed the story, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have an unbelievable story of deception and betrayal. You won't believe what happened when I discovered the truth about my wife's girls' night out. I am 35 and my ex-wife, Emily, is 30 as of the time I write this story. Emily and I had been married for more than 5 years, and I loved her so much. The truth is, we go a long way back as we grew up in the same community and attended the same school at a particular point in our lives. I was way ahead of her in class, and though we weren't together like the typical high school lovers, we met when I was in my late 20s. We dated and broke up a couple of times, but in the end, we realized we could not stay without each other because we were so deeply in love. I worked for a top construction company, and because of my busy schedule, I was barely at home to spend time with my ex-wife. She complained a couple of times, but she knew I was out there making money and trying to close deals so I could afford the kind of lifestyle she wanted. Emily was a remote worker. She worked from home, and her job kind of gave her enough time to do the things she liked, hang out with her friends, and she could even afford to put off her work for a couple of hours to watch her favorite television shows. But it was not so for me if I wasn't inspecting a particular site or trying to buy an old house for renovation. I was working on site, and by the time I came back home, I would be so exhausted, and this went on for a while. I tried to make it up to Emily as much as I could during the weekend. We'd go out, just the two of us, jump on a mini vacation whenever we could, and I bought her expensive stuff just as my way to make up for my unavailability. She loved all of those things, and she understood that I was doing the most to make her happy. We didn't have a child yet because she said she was not ready to be a mom, and besides, She wanted me to make more money so our child could have the best life, get a good education, and not have to struggle as we did in the early stages of our lives. Though I tried to talk to her a lot of times about it. I even explained to her that they were people who were not earning as much as we did, but they had a comfortable family and they were all happy. But she kept insisting that when the time was right, she would let me know, so I backed off. All along, I did not know that Emily was having an affair behind me, and she was so good at hiding it. It all began when I came home a bit early from work one day, and she was preparing to go to a meeting. She had her makeup on, wore a beautiful blue tight dress, released her blonde hair, and wore a pair of black heels. That did not look like an ideal meeting outfit to me, but I shook it off. When she returned home that evening, she was covered in a strong masculine cologne, and when I asked her about it, she said she hugged a couple of people after the meeting, and she could not tell where the cologne came from. I bought that too, and let it slide. But she raised my suspicions when she declined our mini vacation just because she wanted to be a part of her girls' hangout, which could have been rescheduled, and she claimed she had more reunion meetings to attend. I understood that she was the treasurer of her class, but it just did not make any sense for her to turn down traveling with me for a school reunion meeting and her girls' hangout. She knew how much I worked my ass off, and she knew I was not going to be getting a long break anytime soon, and besides, it had been months since we spent quality time together. So, after she attended her meetings 3 times that week alone, I knew something was off, and I decided to find out. On that particular day, she said she was going on a girls' night out with her friends, but she would be sleeping at one of her friends' houses that night. I knew Emily was a social butterfly. She just wanted to be a part of everything, but my instincts told me she was lying. She showed no iota of concern about leaving me at home, despite knowing that I really wanted to be with her. The funny thing was, she spent the whole day picking out what to wear and was more concerned about her looks than the outing itself, which was very unlike her. I had a backup phone, and I left it in her car while I pretended to see her off that evening. It was hard for me, if I had to be sure I wasn't making things up in my head. Some minutes after she left, I phoned one of her friends and told her that I wanted to surprise Emily that night, and I asked where they'd be hanging out, but from the way she sounded confused on the phone, it was obvious there was no girls' night out, and Emily lied to me. A part of me wanted to let it slide, and another part of me needed to know what was going on. I followed my tracker, and it led me to a fancy restaurant far from her friend's house, where they were all supposed to meet up. I must say that stepping out of my car to see Emily cuddled and being fed by her high school sweetheart was stomach-wrecking for me that night. I recognized him instantly. He was a guy that went to the same high school as us. I knew she was up to something, but I was definitely not expecting to see her with David, of all people. Anyways, I did not create a scene, I just made sure she saw me, and I walked back to my car. The moment she saw me, she ran after me, but I drove off, and I was thinking she'd drive after me immediately, but she didn't. I got home before she did, and I didn't hesitate to throw her things out of the house. By the time she returned, she was a complete mess. Her eyelids were swollen from crying, and she tried to beg me to forgive her and give her a second chance, but that was the worst form of betrayal. I asked her to go back to David, and that's when she flipped and told me she was leaving anyway. She said I wasn't giving her attention, barely spent time with her, she didn't feel loved, and David was a better man than I was. She even told me she was pregnant for David, and she even wanted to do me a favor and tell me the child was mine. Unfortunately, I had enough for one night, so I asked her to give to David what belonged to David, and I threw her out. A couple of months later, we divorced, and by then her baby bump was so visible. It didn't take long before David ghosted her, and she had to deal with the baby all by herself, pay for her rent, and do multiple jobs just to get things going. To even think that I never asked her to contribute to the rent or some of the bills at home. I paid all of them by myself, and I never complained, yet she never appreciated any of that. It was her loss because I did all I could to treat her right, and I was faithful. But I have moved on now, though it was hard, but I know I'm going to be open to being with someone better pretty soon. OP, I agree with you. She had to give to David what belonged to him, and I'm glad you did not fall into the trap of giving her a second chance. And to think that she did not even show remorse and went ahead to compare you with her lover, that is pathetic. I understand that you loved her, but she didn't, because if she loved you, she would never want to hurt you or even get pregnant with another man's baby. As you said, it's the worst form of betrayal. Take some time to work on yourself and find peace with what happened. Thank you for sharing your story. Let's now get into our next story for today. Hello, I'm sharing this story because my ex-wife, April, 26 female, messed up big time. When April and I got married, she swore that nothing was going to come between us, and I believed her. Our love was young. We had just been married, and it wasn't up to 2 years, though we dated for a few years before getting married. Because of our beliefs, our marriage was the kind of relationship where we did not get intimate before marriage, so after we got married, it was a lot of exploring for the both of us. The first few months of our marriage were awesome. We made love almost every day, and that's because I could not get enough of her. She was crazy about me, and I was crazy about her too. And despite our busy work schedule, we always found ways to maximize our moments together. April worked part-time at a bakery, and I worked at a tech company. Right from when we met, she always told me how she wanted to work at a bakery and possibly own hers one day. I was the one who advised her to leave her job, since it was not paying so much, and do the things she loved, and she listened. Because of her passion and consistency, after we got married, she was lucky to get a baking contract from one of her friends who needed her to bake and sell pastries every Tuesday. The contract was a juicy one, and she took it. Before she got the contract, we used to spend more time together on Monday evenings, talking about our day at work and the rest. But since selling at her friend's talk show was an every week thing, April and I became distant. It wasn't just about Monday nights anymore, she just changed and paid less attention to me. If she wasn't baking, she'd either be on her phone, or she was just not paying attention to me like she used to. Slowly, our intimacy reduced. She would always claim she was not in the mood, even when she knew how much I loved to make love to her. As if all of these were not enough, I noticed that April stayed out late on Monday nights, and if I asked her why, she'd say she went grocery shopping for the next day, and sometimes she would pick a fight with me over it. Funnily enough, whenever she returned from her grocery shopping by 10 p.m., she'd come home with a very small bag, and since I was familiar with her baking ingredients, I knew most of them did not need refilling, as she claimed. At first, I tried to understand her, because she returned from the bakery, where she worked by 6 p.m., and she did not have time during the day to go shopping, but when she began to stay out late several times on Monday nights, and would return with almost nothing in the bag, I knew something was wrong. It was more suspicious when she'd even come back and go straight to the bathroom with her phone, which she rarely did, then ignore me till the next day. It became more frustrating that I'd return home by 7 p.m. and she'd leave almost 30 minutes after, without a good reason, and would still stay out till 1 a.m. When I could not take it anymore, I hired a private investigator to follow her on her Monday nights. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. The PI returned with pictures of April and a man, whose name was Alex, and they'd hang out together until she drove back home. There were pictures of them kissing, hugging each other, kissing in the car, and even pictures of her going into his house. The PI followed her for 3 Mondays, just to be sure. When he gave them to me, I was devastated. Our marriage was barely 2 years old, and she was already cheating on me. I was so pained, and I could not believe what my eyes had seen. I wouldn't have imagined spending the rest of my life with someone else, but April ruined all of the vows we made to each other. I wanted to pay her back, and that's when I came up with the perfect plan. Her birthday was just around the corner, and coincidentally, it was on a Monday too. Before I left to work on her birthday, I told her I would not return home early, but I would make it up to her during the weekend, and she agreed. Meanwhile, I already made preparations for a surprise party, and her friends and family were coming in with cakes, gifts, and drinks for her. That evening, we all went to my apartment by 8 p.m. I texted her about an hour earlier and apologized again, so she had no clue any of us were coming home. I had my house key, so accessing the house was easy. Everyone went in, the light was off, and there was loud music playing in the background, so she didn't hear us come in. My PI already informed me that she was home with Alex, so it was well planned, and everything turned out the way I wanted it to. Aside from the house being dark, the light in our room was on, and the door was partially closed. Her mom was the first to get to the door, and immediately, she opened it in a bid to surprise her. She stood at the entrance in shock, and the cake fell off her hands. Her sister screamed too, and her dad began to shout. April was caught red-handed on top of Alex, naked and pleasuring themselves. It all happened so fast, and before she could get up and cover herself, everyone had seen her. I acted surprised as well, but deep down I wasn't. I knew it wasn't the first time they were screwing each other. Her best friend, Anna, was there, and from the look on her face, she did not expect to see April like that. Anna tried to push people out of the corridor, but it was too late. Everyone came to take a peek at April and her lover. I pretended to be so hurt, and I punched Alex until I broke his nose. April's father tried to hold me down, but it wasn't working. April, on the other hand, was confused about who to beg or apologize to. She tried begging me and her parents at the same time, but her parents turned away in shame and left the house. I had to keep my act, so I threw both April and her lover out of the house, and the party was never held. Before her birthday, I had contacted a lawyer, and my divorce papers were already on their way. When it was ready, April signed, and we parted ways. As I expected, Alex ditched her. He just wanted a fling with her and did not think it would ruin her marriage. Her parents shut the door behind her too, but her best friend took her in for a while, though she was so disappointed. After our divorce, she showed up at my house and stalked me on social media, even after I blocked her. In the end, she got sent a restraining order to stay away from me and stay off my property. Though it was all planned, I still find it hard to get rid of the image of April sleeping with her lover on her matrimonial bed. I miss her most of the time, but I'm glad I learned the truth early. I have moved on now, but I'm not ready for anything serious, and I don't think I'll be anytime soon. April did a horrible thing to you, but even though you humiliated her, no man deserves to get that from his wife. I understand that you loved her so much and planned on spending the rest of your life with her, but you can consider this as a good riddance to a selfish woman. If you didn't find out, she probably would have cheated on you in the future, but I'm glad you found out early, and it was really smart of you to hire a private investigator. It's a good thing her parents were there. You don't have to explain anything to them, and she'll have to live with the disappointment for a very long time. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We are proud that you made the right decision. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a jaw-dropping story about deception, betrayal, and confronting the truth. You won't believe what happened when I found out my wife wasn't where she said she'd be. My wife and I met on a hiking trip. After we were convinced by each of our friends to come along, we instantly knew we wanted to do this more often. As soon as we met, she gave me butterflies. She was outgoing and outdoorsy, confident but anxious about getting close to other people. She told me she had some past boyfriends that broke her trust. Hiking with the same group of people in the spring, summer, or fall was great for her and me. After the first hike, we started going on dates. We got married nearly 3 years later. We were married for 3 years, and during our marriage we hiked with that same group of friends, which consisted of Clay, his brother, and 3 girls. Working full-time sucked us away for a while. Before we knew it, it had been 3 months since we hiked with our friends in the spring, and if we didn't hurry, we'd miss the whole summer. The last time we went, I noticed my wife talking and laughing with Clay more than she ever had before. Usually she stuck pretty close to 2 of the girls and me. I'd like to say I didn't pay it any mind, but it bothered me, and maybe that's why I avoided hiking for a while. I noticed my wife was texting him, but when I asked why she was, she said I didn't need to be immature or jealous. I told her that was just something she could say to defend herself. Then she told me that Clay was already seeing someone. I didn't think this was true, and just seemed like a clever way to get me to leave her alone about it. A week after that, so still about 3 months since she started talking to Clay all the time, she said she wanted to go hiking with the crew again that weekend and camp on Friday night. I thought it was awfully convenient for her to bring this up after I told her I had to work this weekend because my boss insisted. I specifically had to work Friday afternoon and Saturday morning. She told me it was moving away the week after and wouldn't be able to hike with us anymore. So then I felt bad and was pressured to allow my wife to go with her and the rest of the group without me. We'd known them for years, so I didn't think she'd run off with Clay, who'd apparently just come out of the closet. So she left Friday just before my shift at work. I got home late, super lonely, and went to work the next morning. I wanted to call her or text, but she didn't have a signal in the woods. There were a few spots we set up camp before, just off the trail in certain recognizable areas. No service anywhere. I got home Saturday and anxiously waited for her to return. When 7 p.m. rolled around, I was annoyed. They weren't supposed to camp another night. I called Clay and his brother first, but they didn't answer. I called each of the girls and they all answered. They all told me the same story, that they got home around 2 p.m. and assumed my wife was gonna head home too, but she was still at the site when they left. Also, none of the girls were moving. They could have done this hiking trip on a weekend when I was off. I was getting more disheartened as the night went on. I wondered if she got lost in the woods. Then Clay's brother called me back. He said his brother was home, sleeping, and my wife stayed behind to camp with one of the girls another night. I told him that lie wouldn't work because I already knew all 3 girls were home. He was speechless for a minute, but then played it off like his memory might have been foggy, or maybe the girl changed her mind. He asked me if my wife would camp by herself for a night, and I told him she wouldn't. I demanded and pressured him for the truth, knowing he was trying to hide something. He caved in and admitted she was at their house, with Clay in his room. I drove straight to his house. Clay's brother let me in, but begged me to go easy on him. I opened the door and found my wife on top of him. I had prepared myself on the car ride over that this was going to be bad, but it was different actually seeing it. They struggled to get off each other quickly, and my wife acted like I was intruding on her special night. I couldn't believe my ears as she said I had no right to hunt her down and just walk in on them. I called her a very insulting name that is usually given to women who sleep around. I told her she was cheating on me, but I felt stupid even having to spell it out for her. I should have every right to prove myself a good man and find her. It means I care, which is more than I'd expect from her. It was like she thought I was stupid or wouldn't try to look for her when she didn't return from a camping trip. Then she said Clay convinced her I'd never find out, and even got his brother to lie for us. That's when Clay spoke up and said it was her that started coming on to him, even while I was hiking 10 feet behind them. My wife looked at him like she wanted to strangle him. AP apologized to me and said he made a mistake. He wanted to start making it right immediately by telling me the truth. I just asked him to give us some space. He left the room and my wife tried to say nothing even really happened. I knew right then that I didn't want to say another word to her, and it wouldn't matter if I did. I wish her luck finding another place to live and left the house. I knew my wife didn't have her car, so AP would probably have to give her a ride somewhere at the least. I just didn't care. I wanted karma to work however it needed to. She started living at Clay's house, but it only lasted a week. He felt bad for what he did to me by taking my wife, and just because she did it with him didn't mean he had to house her. He told me she really planned to stay in the woods with him, but didn't want the police to start searching for them there if I reported her missing. When he kicked her out, I thanked him for it and for trying to make this right. It helped me to realize it wasn't my fault, and I could get through it. I found a new group of friends to go fishing with instead of the hikers. I enjoy it a lot because it doesn't remind me of her. Feels like adventure and change. She completely betrayed me, but didn't get to live happily ever after. She lived with one of the hiking girls, the only friend she had left. This girl didn't want her there after a short while and started making life a little harder for her, like eating her groceries and parking behind her car in the driveway instead of on the street. She actually messaged me and told me I dodged a bullet, even if I was with her for 6 years. My ex started trying to date again, and she hated it so much that she kicked her out after annoying the heck out of her. OP, it is terrible that your wife chose to be with another man that you both trusted for years. If you develop trust issues with guy friends around your significant other, it would be her fault. A little bit his fault too, and even his brother's because he tried to lie for them as well. This was a sad story to hear because there was more than just one betrayal. You did the right thing by calling people and going to look for her. Imagine if you hadn't and she just came home and lied. You needed to know she was doing this so you could have the chance to find someone that actually loves you. I don't feel like she would have jumped to your side in times of trouble. Instead, she probably would have tried to blame you for something. Anything to make it seem like she didn't screw up, but could also get what she wanted. I believe you will find someone 1,000 times better than your ex. Keep following your instincts and have faith that things will work out. Thank you for sharing your story. Now let's get into the next story for today. My wife, 29, and I, 34, were married for 5 years. We met at a New Year's Eve party hosted by her father. She had one sister who used to be friends with me. After I started dating her sister, our relationship diminished. I don't think it was because she was upset. I knew she was glad her sister married me. She knew I was a good man. But there just wasn't as much motivation for us to continue a close relationship like that. During the time we were married, my wife was working at the same place and did great work. She was anxiously awaiting a promotion and big raise. That day finally came and she was ecstatic. When she got home that night after work, she was super pleased with herself. We went on a road trip as soon as the money started to come in, and that was the best memory I have of her. When we got back, things started to change. And I didn't know it at the time, but something had already changed before we went on a road trip. She continued working, but she started coming home and acting strange. She avoided eye contact, especially when I asked her how work went, and even though we used to cook dinner together every night, she started to insist that I work on my project or do something else while she cooked. This went on for a week, and then one night we were in bed and I started taking off her panties. She immediately started crying. It was obviously a red flag. When I asked what was going on, she didn't even try to lie. It's like the sentence of truth was already formed in her mind. Like a cat in a bag instead of words in her head. She said her boss finally offered her the raise and promotion on one condition. I held my breath as she told me she had sex with him. I just started crying. I was surprised because I never cry. I think I was really shocked because I didn't see this coming, and we just got back from our road trip. She cried too and told me she did this because she thought it would better our lives and bring us closer together. As long as I never found out, and it was just once. I told her I would have given all the money in the world for her not to do this. She started crying harder and whined that she knew that, and she made a huge mistake. I asked her if this was just a one-time event, and she hesitated before saying yes. I let that go in the moment because I knew it didn't even matter if she slept with him more than once. Once was enough. I said if she wanted to make it up to me, she had to help me get her boss fired. The caller left her face and she said she didn't want to. I told her it's the only way she can make this right. She asked how we could get him fired. I told her to get proof that there was infidelity by exposing his text messages. She told me that she did what she had to for my proof, but she still expected forgiveness. In the hopes it would help me forgive her, then she asked me to type out the email to her boss so we could get him fired and I could start forgiving her. I told her I never planned to forgive her for this. I already filed for divorce. Around the same time, she was getting her proof of infidelity for me. I told her I wouldn't trust her with a pet goldfish anymore, let alone my heart. She never should have accepted any amount of money for cheating on me. I told her she actually deserved that promotion without sleeping with him because she worked hard. She started crying again as I told her that she could have gone to headquarters about his unlawful and degrading request, but instead she gave him what he wanted, and perhaps because she wanted it too. She could have been honorable and behaved like the lady her father raised her to be. Taking a sleazy offer like this and believing I'd never found out, told me she didn't deserve me or know what it means to be a respectable person. She was shocked that I didn't plan on forgiving her, which is why she got me proof to fire her boss. She didn't know I was also going to mention her name and request she be fired too, because she spoke to coworkers about it and made them uncomfortable. I told her to get out, but she begged me to at least let her sleep on the couch. I told her I couldn't afford the temptation of having her near me. She betrayed me, so I couldn't allow her near me. She needed to suffer the consequences. She left, but it was difficult. I wasn't sure if I need to call the police to get her out, but I didn't think they'd get involved like that since she was on the deed too. She had the option to tell her father I was leaving her, and he'd give her a place to stay. That's exactly what she did, but she really didn't want to tell him why I left her. He called me to find out, so I told him. He was extremely embarrassed and ashamed. Her mother cheated on him years ago, So he raised her as best he could to understand how terrible it is to do that to someone. He was so embarrassed that he didn't tell any of their family members or friends that his daughter had moved in with him again. Both my ex-wife and AP were fired from their jobs and divorced. AP didn't even trust her enough to continue seeing her, because she filmed him without his knowledge and made him lose his job. I'd say everything turned out as it should have in my situation. I started dating again, but I'm not going to quickly attach to anyone, and maybe that's for the better. OP, I am so sorry your wife thought it was okay to sleep with her boss for a promotion. It's completely wrong, and she should have respected herself and you more than that. Like you said, there was a different, more honorable route that she could have taken. It means that she did not care what her father taught her, how her mother broke his heart, or about you. You most certainly did the right thing by kicking her out and refusing to stay married. I'm glad she couldn't keep her shameful secret hidden. The truth always comes out, but even before it does, karma begins. I thank you for sharing this story so that others may be encouraged and understand what must be done if they're in this situation. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care and thanks again for all your support. If you were shocked by this story, please give this video a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more intense stories like this. Thanks for watching, and